Welcome to Things Visible and Invisible, a podcast that discusses life, faith, current events, culture, history, and more, all in relation to Jesus Christ and his church. I'm Bishop Donald Hying, and in this episode, we will discuss the visions of the Sacred Heart experienced by St. Margaret Mary and the extraordinary promises that Jesus makes to those who embrace this devotion. In continuing to reflect on the Sacred Heart of Jesus, I want to focus in this podcast on Jesus' revelation of his heart to St. Margaret Mary Alacoque. There were certainly other saints that had devotion to the Sacred Heart who had experienced the Sacred Heart. But for us in the last 5 centuries, it's St. Margaret Mary's experience of the Sacred Heart of Jesus that is normative for us and that we see so clearly and understand God's love for us poured out in Christ. So St. Margaret Mary was a cloistered nun of the Visitation Order in the second half of the 17th century. And she lived in a convent in France in a town called Pré-le-Monial. You can still go there today and pray in the same chapel where she had these extraordinary visions of the heart of Christ. The central one occurred on December 27th, 1673, the feast of St. John the Evangelist, 2 days after Christmas. It was right before the Great Silence, right before the end of the day. St. Margaret Mary was praying alone in the chapel when she had a vision of Jesus Christ standing before her. His body was filled with light. His body was luminescent, as he must have been in the moment of the Transfiguration. And it was that night in that chapel that the Lord revealed his heart to her. His heart was on fire, bleeding, crowned with thorns, pulsating. And the Lord said to St. Margaret Mary, "Behold this heart which has loved men so much. My divine heart is so inflamed with love for mankind that it can no longer contain within itself the flames of its burning charity and must spread them abroad by your means." We see there this explosive desire of Jesus that every person come to know his love for them and that they love him in return. Like any relationship between friends, one can often feel deeply the pain that occurs if the other is turned away from the friendship or no longer wants to spend time together. The Lord puts himself in such a place of vulnerability that he desires and longs for our love. And like the Good Shepherd, comes in search of us when we have strayed away from him. It's rather wondrous to ponder the fact that it matters to Jesus whether we love him or not, that he is not impervious to either our love or our indifference, that it matters to him how we respond. When I came to realize that, both in studying the revelations of the Sacred Heart and in prayer, it changed something within me, that God is not indifferent to what's going on in my heart and in my life. And if I ignore God, if I push God away, there's something within God that causes a painful reaction for my sake. Because in pushing God away, I'm walking away from salvation. I'm walking away from mercy. And the Lord's heart aches because of what we do to ourselves when we ignore God or turn away from him or put a block of sin between us and his heart. So Jesus chose St. Margaret Mary to be the instrument of revelation to the world. And it occurred at a time when the heresy of Jansenism was rampant in parts of the church, especially in France. One way to understand Jansenism is to see it as, in some ways, a Catholic version of Puritanism. That there was this overemphasis on God's justice, God's wrath, God's punishment of sin, our radical human unworthiness. All those things have their place in our understanding of God. But anytime one aspect of the Lord or of the church is overemphasized to the detriment of others, a correction is needed. And so at the time of St. Margaret Mary, many people only received Holy Communion a few times in their lives because they were not deemed worthy or they did not consider themselves worthy to receive the Lord. So perhaps the Sacred Heart of Jesus appeared when he did, where he did, to offer a needed correction to that overemphasis on justice, to lift up mercy, to that overemphasis on unworthiness, to lift up grace. Yes, we are all unworthy. Yes, we are all sinners. But through the mercy and power of Jesus, the Lord heals, forgives, and saves us. And so what we need to, in all humility, enter into his heart and there find the grace and mercy that he so ardently wants to share with us. When I was a child, a beautiful picture of the Sacred Heart hung above our television in the living room. And I grew up in the 60s when a television was a significant piece of furniture in the house. We had 4 or 5 channels. You had to wait for the tubes to warm up. It took up a lot of room. But above that television was a picture of the Sacred Heart. And that picture was there because my parents had consecrated our family to the Sacred Heart. We went to Mass on First Fridays. We went to confession. We prayed a consecratory prayer every First Friday as a family. And even as a little boy, I remember being maybe 4, watching television, looking up at that picture. Before I even fully understood who Jesus was, I intuitively grasped 2 things in looking upon the image of the Sacred Heart. One is that smiling man with a burning heart loved me in some absolute sort of way. And secondly, I was convinced that he lived somewhere in our house, even though I knew I would never see him. Somehow he was present in our lives. And so the revelation of Jesus' heart to St. Margaret Mary points us to a need for confidence in the mercy of God, to a deep desire to refrain from sin and to do penance and to experience Jesus' healing power in the sacrament of reconciliation. The Sacred Heart also speaks of the need for atonement, to do penance for the sins of the world, that in our lives, we can fill up what is lacking in the lives of others, that we can offer our sufferings or do some penance or embrace some difficult task with love for the Sacred Heart. And the Lord, in his mercy, takes that humble gift and unleashes through it the mighty power of his salvation, of the grace that flows from his death and resurrection. So all of those aspects converge in one's devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. I wanted to go through the 12 promises that Jesus made to St. Margaret Mary for those who have a true devotion to his Sacred Heart. They are extraordinary, and they should certainly inspire us to either consecrate ourselves to the Sacred Heart or renew our consecration if we have already done so. Jesus says, I will give them all the graces necessary in their state of life, that God's grace will always be sufficient for us, that whatever we need, God will grant us. Number 2, I will establish peace in their homes. How many homes today are rent by conflict, division, estrangement, fighting, anger, lack of forgiveness? To bring the Sacred Heart into our family and into our home is to allow the peace of the Lord to flow into us. Because if we're all loving him, by that fact, we will be bound to each other. Number 3, I will comfort them in all their afflictions. We see in Jesus' heart, especially in the Gospels, as we meditated in the last podcast, that the Lord wants to console us, strengthen us, heal us. He's on our side. And when we turn to him, he is ready and willing and able to come to our aid in all of our afflictions. Number 4, I will be their secure refuge during life and above all in death. In all those moments of suffering and fear, of anxiety, we can always turn to the Sacred Heart of Jesus with confidence, knowing that all is well because we are held in his heart and he already knows the outcome of whatever it is that we're worried about or is causing us concern. That gives me great consolation. Jesus already has the answer, and the answer is in his heart. And he will give me the answer as I need to see it and as I need to feel it. So devotion to the Sacred Heart invites us to this radical trust in the love and mercy of Jesus, that all is well because he is with us. Number 5, I will bestow abundant blessings upon all their undertakings. What a consolation that Jesus wants to bless us, that what we strive to do in this life for his name and for his glory will bear fruit if we do it in union with his heart. Number 6, sinners will find in my heart the source and infinite ocean of mercy. Here we see a beautiful convergence between Sacred Heart devotion and the divine mercy revealed by Saint Faustina. In the divine mercy image, we see these rays of red and white flowing from the heart of Christ, the blood and water that flowed from the wounded side of Jesus. And we see that for sinners, this refuge becomes true for us in the sacraments. That in baptism and later in confession, our sins are washed away. In the Eucharist, we are fed with the body and blood of Christ. So even in our sinfulness, we can turn to the Lord and there find the fullness of his forgiveness and mercy. Number 7, lukewarm souls shall become fervent. Lukewarmness, acedia, a lack of passion for the faith can sometimes afflict us. We go through those dark moments when it feels like we're just going through the motions. When I feel that in my life, that lukewarmness, just looking at an image of the Sacred Heart perks my soul up because I see Jesus loving me. I see his heart on fire with love for me. So lukewarm souls shall become fervent. Number 8, fervent souls shall quickly mount to high perfection. The perfection of holiness, the perfection of loving as Jesus loved. That St. Margaret Mary had this experience where the Lord took her heart, placed it within his heart where it took total flame, and then put her heart back into her body. Said, now you can love with my heart. So the perfection of holiness is loving with the heart of Christ, seeing every person as we would see Christ. I'm convinced the great secret of the saints is they were literally able to see Christ in every person they met, especially the poor and suffering. That was certainly the experience of saints like Mother Teresa, Francis of Assisi, St. Camillus, St. John of God, St. Vincent de Paul, St. Louise. They could care for the poor and the sick, even put up with repulsive smells and terrible wounds, because they saw in every person Jesus looking for compassion and mercy. Number 9, I will bless every place in which an image of my heart is exposed and honored, that our homes, our offices, our places of worship are blessed by the Lord when we honor an image of his heart. 10, I will give to priests the gift of touching the most hardened hearts. What priest would not want to do that? And so when a priest is in tandem with the heart of Jesus, it's the heart of the Lord using the priesthood of our ordination to reach out to those who are even most hardened in their heart against the Lord. Those who shall promote this devotion shall have their names written in my heart, that our hearts be united to the Lord, that our names be written on his heart. What a consoling promise, that we will be forever remembered and loved by the Lord, especially in the moment of death. And 12, I promise you in the excessive mercy of my heart that my all-powerful love will grant to all those who receive Holy Communion on the first Fridays of 9 consecutive months the grace of final perseverance. They shall not die in my disgrace, nor without receiving the sacraments. My divine heart shall be their safe refuge in this last moment. When we contemplate the moment of our death, like St. Joseph, we want Mary and Jesus to be at our bedside. We want Jesus' heart to be our refuge. So in our devotion to the Sacred Heart, we're preparing for a good and holy death and trusting to him our final moments, that he will carry us over the waters of death and lead us to the fullness of light. And there we will behold the Sacred Heart of Jesus forever, on fire with love for us. So these revelations of St. Margaret Mary are as apropos and pertinent and urgent for us today as they were in 1673. And we see in devotion to the Sacred Heart then entirety of living out the gospel in both its theological, its devotional, its affective form. That our body, soul, mind, and heart, in uniting to the heart of Christ, become an extension of Jesus in this world. Sacred Heart of Jesus, have mercy on us.